Today's video is going to be a little bit different, kind of in line with what I tried to do with my last video, but be kind of sitting here talking about some things. I'm not going to go over my performance for my second IDPA match or anything like that. This is going to be a video about between the two matches I've done with IDPA and USPSA. What are the differences as a new shooter that I've seen between the two shooting, the two major shooting sports? I know PCSL's a thing that's booming right now. I haven't had a chance to go do a PCSL match, so I can't answer exactly how that one is. We were talking in my last video I did of my second IDPA stage or meet match, whatever you want to call it. A couple of the regular IDPA shooters were talking with some of the guys who I was talking with and interacting with about some of the rules that some agree with and don't agree with, and stuff like that. And that kind of put a little bug in my head about maybe I'll do kind of a free form. I do have like notes and stuff here that I'll be glancing at, but so I've been kind of jotting down some notes about the differences between the two shooting sports and my opinion on them. So I'm going to preface this to say I think both sports, from a newcomer perspective, are very, very good. And I don't care if you start with USPSA or IDPA. If you haven't got into competition shooting and you think you're a good shooter, both of these sports will humble you very quickly. I've been shooting flat ranges. I mean, I have my military experience, but as far as pistols are concerned, I've been basically exclusively shooting flat range or shooting at my house. Like, that's for pistols, that's all I really did. Yes, I used to practice my drawing, and like I would practice, dry fire occasionally at home, but nothing frequent or nothing semi-consistent. And I would venture to guess that most people who are into guns are in the same boat as me. I think I teeter a little bit more, and I get out and do stuff more with guns than most Americans or most people who have guns, but still, regardless of the fact, people aren't training. And you hear on YouTube all the time, like, you need to get out there and train, you need to get out there and train, you need to get out there and train. And people will get out in the range and they will shoot their guns, but they won't put themselves under a timer or under stress or anything like that. So both sports get you out of your comfort zone and get you to notice deficiencies that you wouldn't have noticed if you were just shooting on the range or you're just dry firing with no plan at your house. So I want to preface that both sports are good at that. I guess the crux of this whole entire topic, what kind of stuck in my head, is kind of what some of the IDPA people said in the second match, that a lot of them don't do the USPSA stuff because they think it's unrealistic. The gist of it, there are some people who don't say that, but just the vibe that I gathered from the IDPA shooters was that they like IDPA because it's supposed to be more defensive pistol, which is in the name. If you don't know, IDPA stands for International Defensive Pistol Association, and USPSA is United States Practical Shooting Association, which I think is a branch off of IPSC, like International Practical Shooter Association. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a branch off that. So the IPSC, if you want to call it that. Some people use the slang IPSC, but once again, I'm still very new, and I'm just looking at this from the viewpoint of a new shooter and somebody with military experience. So that's the gist of why some of the IDPA people get into IDPA and stay there. Is it's supposed to be, the rules are set up to be more defensive pistol applications. You'll see I made this generic little slideshow here, but you'll see that, like, I'll go over a stage. I don't know who made the stage rating. I just pulled it off Google. Most of these things I pulled off Google. Kind of the stage planning and stuff that happens with IDPA to kind of take the gamemanship out of it. So IDPA branched off of USPSA. Well, they didn't branch off, but people made their own division because, from what I understand, back in the late 90s, early 2000s sometime, I'm not sure. A lot of like USPSA guns were getting kind of crazy, like stuff that people wouldn't be carrying day to day. And there was a lot of people who didn't like that aspect of like the money involved with being fast and competitive in USPSA. And I don't remember what the divisions were back then or anything like that, but essentially they started this to kind of bring it back to a more concealment focused, practical or defensive like scenarios. So that's where it stems from. But yeah, that's the gist of it. Overall, the IDPA shooters, like, they like to say their sport's more realistic. And then I've heard from the USPSA guys in my 2 matches, just listening to people. I didn't really talk to anybody about this, just listening to the vibe. The USPSA people, or people who are doing the USPSA match, the vibe I got from them was that IDPA is kind of like a tactical cosplay, was the word that they didn't use that exact phrase, but that's kind of the vibe I got from them. Essentially, if it looks like you're about to go bird watching, and that's the vibe. So you can see here on this vest, like it's kind of a bird watching vest. If it looks like you're about to go shoot birds, like take pictures of birds, like it's not really tactical in that sense. It's more cosplaying the tactical side of things, if that makes sense. And that's kind of and I kind of agree to a certain extent, what they're saying. Okay. And I see it from the IDPA side, what they were trying to do. I just don't think that when they say the IDPA is realistic and USPSA is not, I don't think that's coming from a position of, I don't think it's an accurate position to have. So essentially, the IDPA people say, I'm reading from my notes here, so if it looks like I'm looking down, it's more of a defensive style of shooting. They focus on like concealment. They focus on cover, fault lines, tactical priority, which is a rule I do not agree with, and the realistic gear is what they say. And then USPSA is more of a performance sport, so like the Formula One or whatever of it, where USPSA is focusing on speed, how fast can you do it, how efficient, so how accurate you are, movement, like moving around different stages, and the freedom to move around different stages. IDPA is very strict on movement. It's almost like, think of it this way, it's almost like IDPA, how well you can follow rules, because like IDPA stages, like I said, I'll show an example. IDPA stages are very, very strict, and you have a certain order to do things. And as long as you follow that order, then you're fine. You won't get procedurals or anything like that. Where USPSA, you can kind of see in this picture here, you're free to make your own decisions and decide yourself what's the most efficient and what's the fastest way to get through this stage within the confines of these boxes. Where IDPA, and I'm not super privy on all the rules, but essentially like you'll have like a fault line, and if you're at a fault line, you have to engage in tactical priority, which is like slicing the pie, is what they said multiple times. So you have to engage if you're at a fault line here and there's targets to the right over here, you do the right side ones first, then move in, because that's the ones you would see first. And if you don't do them in that order, you get procedural penalties on it. But I think the biggest thing is that IDPA preaches realism, and USPSA is not. And that's kind of like the whole foundation of this whole thing, is like, one's preaching realism, one isn't. Is that really the case? Is it really realistic? The main topic of this whole thing is IDPA. Is it more realistic? They say they're more realistic because they shoot from concealment and use defensive gear. So concealment, only, in my opinion, only really matters based on what people actually wear. Okay, so concealment here, you'll see most people using these vests as concealment, covering up their stuff, right? If you're looking at it from a realistic perspective, if we look at the data, this is coming from, National Firearm Surveys, the USCCA member surveys, and market reports. In the waistband, like strong side, so like for me, it would been the right side. I actually used to carry in the waistband and the hip. I did that for years, and for the longest time, it was the one that was the leader for years. And then with like advances in like Kydex technology and other things like that, appendix carry is probably going to pass strong side in the waistband holstering relatively quickly. I carry appendix. My last IDPA match I just carried appendix. I literally had a button-up shirt, like a floral, like Hawaiian shirt, and I carried appendix, and I had like one of those generic Amazon belt clip magazine pouches. Okay, because like day to day I'm carrying appendix. That's what I'm carrying. As far as realism goes, that's what I'm carrying, and that's what the vast majority of Americans are carrying, is either in the waistband, strong side, so they have a shirt covering their strong side. Well, they have a shirt covering both sides, but either in the waistband on your strong side at your hip, or appendix carrying. Now, IDPA claims that they are realistic, where 99% of the shooters that I've seen in the 2 matches I've been in, sample size of 2, okay, I want to preface that because it's not like I've been to 30 different matches, but then videos I've watched and stuff like that, 99% of them are carrying outside the waistband belts. So as IDPA rules, like you can't wear like a 2-layer belt. You can't have like a belt, like an inner belt and then an outer belt. You have to have that one belt, and it has to go through, I think it's either all but 3 belt loops or only 3 belt, something like that, where then you can, as long as it's concealed by a garment of some sort, that's considered concealment. You can carry it in the waistband now, like appendix carry stuff, and as far as I know, that's a relatively new rule change. But if we're arguing realism, most people are not going to Walmart with a full outside the waistband belt or rig and like a fishing vest on. That's not, people don't do that, and the data shows that people don't do that, at least the reported data. Some of the people in that match, I was just overhearing them. They were preaching that I use IDPA to train for my day-to-day life or whatever, day-to-day stuff. And as far as shooting's concerned, like trying to be accurate, stuff like that, I can kind of understand that. But none of them, I can almost guarantee you, are wearing a vest or a big ass jacket in the middle of July with an outside the waistband holster and outside the waistband like 2 outside the waistband magazine pouches. Like that doesn't track at all with what I know. And if you didn't know any better, if you look at a USPSA like gun belt, like competition belt versus some of the IDPA ones, you really can't tell the difference outside looking in. I know that like USPSA competition belts, they are 2-stage belts, or I mean 2-layer belts. I know that now, but you could see some of the IDPA people wearing it basically the same thing, but they just have a vest over it. So I would hear people say, well, I don't want to have all these fancy race belts and gun belts and these fancy speed holsters and all this stuff, but like really their equipment really wasn't that different. It was just adding a vest over top of it. But the thing is about the rules with IDPA, it sounds like I'm attacking IDPA. I'm not attacking them. It's just, you have to understand this stuff if you're going into these competitions, that like it's still a game. Even though the rules say you can use in the waistband holster methods like appendix carry and stuff like that, the rules still, because it's still timed, actively discourage that. this is a reason why, like in national matches and stuff you see on the internets, like all the national championship people, like the people who have won these big national matches and stuff, are still just wearing a vest, because the rules state, or the way the rules are designed, the vest is still the fastest way to get through the stages. So if they're going to argue that it's realism based, the rules are kind of going against what they're trying to preach a little bit. But you know, if the garment's just a costume, I think the realism ultimately is cosmetic and not functional. So I think the argument that it's based on realism kind of falls apart in that sense. So here's some examples of what I've seen. So as you can see here, outside the waistband holsters and these vests, okay? Which when I first saw it, this is what I thought of. I thought of people bird watching, okay? This is what the fastest people use. You know, that isn't realistic to me, okay? Instead of going through stages and stuff like that. So I'll show you an example of, I'll show you some examples of a stage here. So essentially this is the starting point, okay? You'll have like your gun or whatever here, simulating some kind of scenario. When you're at the starting point, load your gun when you're shooting T1, right? And then you have to move this position 1 right here. Okay, and then you have to engage, because it's a fault line, in tactical priority. Okay, so you'd engage T1 or T2 twice, T3 twice, T4 twice. Okay, then you'd move to position 2, and then you'd engage T5. Okay, it's very linear. So you have to go here, then you have to go here. Then I'm sure there's some stages that you can go to P4, P3 first, but what I've seen, they tell you to go to P3. You go to P3, you'll engage T6, move over to T7. Okay. In carry optics, you only can carry 10 plus 1 in the first magazine, right? So you'd have 11 shots here. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so you'd have your 10 shots here, and you can reload on the way here. Okay, then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you have 6 rounds left. Move to position 4, you have to engage T9 and then T8, and then the stage is over. Okay. This is an example of a stage. This isn't this stage, it's just an example of a stage. As you see, he went outside in, going to the fault line, outside in. So that's just an example of that of a stage and that's being ran from IDPA. So as far as USPSA gear is concerned, got to keep moving this other way. So you got like a 2-layer belt system. So you got Velcro and then you have an outer belt. They have a shitload of magazines. They got their outside the waistband holster, just like IDPA does. And you, like I said earlier, you have these areas you can stay in, and you can gauge the targets any way you want to. That's the method to get through the stage. However you see fit, whatever the best way you see is the way you get through it. Okay. You don't have to slice the pie. You don't have to engage by tactical priority. You just go through. Okay. And so one of the things that I notice is that the IDPA stages are almost choreographed. It's like you're not really solving any kind of problem. You're just kind of following the instructions. So they make it very linear, and you can't really think outside the box when you're doing IDPA. You're basically restricted to the way the stage is designed. Like the last stage we did last weekend, you had to kick a child, which was like a steel target, and you had to engage you had to go to the next step. You gauge 2 targets, and in this case, these targets are the same, so you can gauge left or right or left, whatever order. And then you have to go to a fault line, and then you have to engage from the outside in. You have to do it in that order. And then you have to move to the next fault line and engage that last target. They're very, 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 like, you have to go to a certain way. There's another stage, for example, where you started holding a clipboard because apparently you're like a warehouse worker or something, like whatever the scenario was. You have to drop the clipboard. You only can pick one, left or right side. There's 2 fault lines and like a V or whatever. and then you had to either go left or right. You couldn't go left and then right. You had to go left or right, and then you had to engage from tactical priorities. So you had to go from, if you went to the left, you had to go from the right and go all the way through in that order. Instead of like in a USPSA, you could go left or whatever. And then let's say there's a box there. Go in that box, you can engage 3 of them, 4 of them, whatever. And then you could reload. As you're reloading, you can move to the other side and engage it because it's easier for you to do, like, to engage those targets. Reloading is another big one for IDPA. You cannot drop a magazine with ammo still in it. So their thought process is that if you're in a defensive situation, you're never going to get rid of ammo that you could use in a defensive situation. And I would counter that by saying, if I'm in a defensive situation, I'm trying to get up a building, right? And there's bad guys in all these rooms, right? So let's say I engage 3 bad guys in one room and I need to move to another room. Okay. So my magazine holds standard Walther magazines holds 15. Okay. If I shot 10 rounds off in this one room and I know there's people in the other room, but I don't know how many there are, I'm not going to go in with 5 rounds. I'm going to drop a magazine and I'm going to load another 15 round in. So I'll have 16 total. That's in the military, you're trained to do that. If you're about to go in a room, you make sure you have a full mag. And I don't know if there's that aspect of it. I don't know if they're just trying to add reloads to stages, like limiting the amount of targets so your round counts less, and then you're just trying to get a reload in there just to practice or just to have a reload in. But I think the idea that you can't drop magazines because in a real life defensive situation, you're not going to, that's bullshit. If I have my Terran tactical mags, like my extensions in there, I'm going to have 19 rounds in a magazine. Okay. If I go and blast off 10, 12, 13 rounds in a magazine, I'm going to 100% of the time drop that magazine with however much ammo's in there. And I'm going to load a new magazine before I go in the next room. In real life, if I can get the fuck out of there, I'm going to engage the 3 targets and get the fuck out. I'm not going to go, I'm not John Wick. I'm not going to go through the next room, right? If we're talking logically and I'm there to protect my family, and let's say my family's in this room and there's a fucking window to the outside world, I'm going to engage the immediate threat in that room and get them the fuck out of there and get the fuck out of that building. I'm not going to go door to door like a SWAT or like John Wick and just clear rooms. But whatever. We could argue semantics all day. The point I'm trying to make is I'm going to drop the mag. Okay. The realism part isn't about pretending that you're like in a robbery or whatever, right? Realism is about how the skills hold up under pressure. And I think that's where USPSA shines, is because you think on your feet, you decide the best course of action, and you execute that plan to the best of your ability. You're not restricted to a certain plan that's already been pre-planned by the stage planner of like an IDPA match. And if we're getting into score, well, I'll just go over the USPSA stages real quick. So you have this particular stage, right? So you start on these X's and you can go and engage any of these targets in any order that you see fit, right? So let's say you're arguing a defensive situation, right? I would engage this guy, and like I wouldn't engage this guy because these are walls, right? But I could see him and I could see him. So maybe I would engage him, or maybe not. Whatever. I'd have to be at the stage, you start here. I was looking at my other monitor. Start here. Maybe I'd engage this guy first, or maybe I'd engage this guy first. I have no idea. It looks like from this stage right here, I could pick one of these 2 targets, but that's the thing with USPSA. That's the beauty of it, is you can choose any way to do it, and there'll always be somebody who does it more efficiently than you do. You might engage him, right? Boom, boom. Okay. And then maybe you decide to go left or right. So you go, as you're loading, you're walking up to this guy, boom, boom. You get to this corner, hit that guy, right? Come to this window, boom, boom, hit that guy. Come to this window, boom, hit that, bang, bang, hit that, move over here. Maybe at this point you'd reload, whatever, right? Go to this open section here, boom, 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 right? And then you can move to here, engage these 4, and then move to here and engage this one. Okay. The sky's the limit. You can go up here, move back here, then move back here. I'm not saying that's efficient, but you could do that. So I'll just go ahead and play a quick example of a USPSA stage. He had the freedom of movement to move anywhere inside this box. He could have done this any way he wanted to. This one seems kind of straightforward. Most people would probably end up doing that, right? That's the last like slide I really had to go over. The scoring for IDPA. So IDPA cares significantly more about accuracy. Now, in every bit of training I've ever had in the military, like even when we're doing our rifle quals, right? We're not aiming for precision necessarily, right? So even if we're shooting at 300 yards, there'll be like a silhouette target, right? Like a plastic one that would drop down once you hit it. As long as you hit that guy, that's considered accurate enough, right? And that's coming from military doctrine, which I'm not saying military doctrine is the end all be all. Most of the time that doctrine is being tailored to make sure most military members pass it, and myself included. Most military members probably got the brightest crowns in the box, but like in a military sense, you're engaging, but you're not like, I need to hit this guy in the face. Like you need to hit him somewhere, right? In a defensive situation, yes, you need to know where your bullets are going at all times, and you need to be accurate, okay? But whether or not you hit, there's a circle here for IDPA that's like 0 time loss, and then 0 time loss here, and then you get 1 second for this zone, and 3 seconds for hitting them in the kidneys and in the arm and stuff like that, right? If you don't hit specifically in these circles in IDPA, you hit just like, let's say the Charlie zone in USPSA, you lose a whole second. So if I were to, we're going to use my stage for an example, right? So in every single one of those shots, I hit in the Alpha or the Charlie zone in USPSA, okay? Which would have been inside these boxes right here. So everywhere inside the chest cavity in every single one of these situations, okay? But I lost 5 seconds because I didn't hit exactly in these little circles. My raw time was good. It only took me 12 seconds. I think I had the fastest raw time in this entire stage, right? And I get it. This is part of the game. Like I should have slowed down and got zeros, right? I get it. But if we're talking about defensive, like a defensive situation, I don't care if I hit here or I hit him, because your heart's like right here, man. Like it's outside the circle right here. That's still a kill shot. Like if you hit anybody in this chest cavity, they're going down. I don't care if it's 2 more inches up this way. And I think that's where the USPSA scoring, because they do. So IDPA does seconds, and then anytime you get procedurals or you don't hit in the perfect circle, you gain time. So then that adds up to your total time. With USPSA, it's time divided by time divided by points divided by time. So if you still get in that zone right here, let's say you get 5 points, right? So if I did this entire thing, I would have lost. So I had 5 Charlies, so there was 20 shots total, okay? And 5 of them were Charlies, okay? So 15 of them were Alpha zones, okay? So I got 75 points there, and 5 are in the Charlie zone. So 15. So that's 90 points, okay? Divided by. Okay, that's a 7.27 hit factor. And a hit factor that high in a USPSA match is pretty, like, I've never been at a stage of 7.27 hit factor. Okay, so that's a very, very, very good hit factor, okay? But because IDPA does it based on time, I lost 5 whole seconds on this run. And I think I finished like 23rd, which, once again, it's the game. But if we're arguing realism and what you would do in a defensive situation, it's more of a matter of how generally accurate and fast you can be to engage the target, okay? You don't get those procedural penalties in real life. You get consequences. If I'm too slow to get these targets on these, or to get bullets on these targets, that could mean the matter of life and death right there. Once again, I'm not saying that that's what I'm thinking about. I'm just saying like the IDPA people saying that it's based on realism and that's why they focus on this stuff. Like in a real life defensive situation, I'm not worried about hitting the circle. I'm worried about hitting them, period. You know, an IDPA also, you know, says that USPSA teaches bad habits that aren't very tactical. And in my opinion, from the 4 matches I've seen, 2 IDPA, 2 USPSA, the USPA shooters have the better gun handling. They have better transitions and movement. They're arguably the best in the shooting world. And those skills definitely transfer in real life. Like, but the thing is USPSA never claims to be tactical, right? IDPA is the one claiming to be tactical. Okay. The raw skills you learn from trying to be fast and semi-precise, right? There's obviously a trade-off and there's a line there. Like some of the best USPSA shooters are going to hit A-zone every time anyway and be fast. And that's because they're training at such a higher speed and a higher level. And those skills, the raw mechanical skills you get from that are unmatched. Now, the IDPA builds discipline and accuracy, but the USPSA builds speed, efficiency, and the problem solving required in a gunfight. And I think those two things matter, right? So discipline and accuracy definitely matters. Speed, efficiency, problem solving equally matter. Okay? But only one of them is the IDPA side is pretending to be in a gunfight. They're pretending that these are actual like defensive pistol gunfights. That's why they're setting them up that way. But in closing, I think that they are both fun, and I think that both sports will make you a better shooter. If you're not doing either one of them, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think both of them have value. But ultimately, only one of them claims to be realistic. And that's kind of like where, you know, these debates and these topics come from. And I think that's what's interesting about it. But basically, if you want to focus on discipline and accuracy and kind of have that defensive, like, tactical priority or like super rigid mindset, then I think IDPA would be the sport that you would like. But if you want to really push your shooting mechanics and be a better shooter overall, I think USPA is the way to go. You need to shoot both of them, learn from both of them, but don't confuse like theatrical realism with actual realism. So that's really what I have to say. Like I said, I'm still very new to this whole thing, but that's kind of off the cuff what I feel overall about IDPA. But if you guys have any comments, and there's going to be comments, people defending both sides, and that's fine. I don't have a hatred for either one, but for me, I think I enjoy the USPSA style of competition better when it comes to me getting better with my pistol. That's just a personal thing. But like I said, I definitely think they're both fun. I have fun doing both of them. And if you're not getting out there and training under a timer and putting pressure on yourself to get better, then you're doing yourself a disservice, ultimately. So let the debate start down there. Comments. I hope you guys like this style format of video. I just took some notes and I was like, I just want to put this on video and see what people think. Public speaking is not my strong suit by any means. I plan to do a USPSA match this weekend. Still on the wait list, but I think I got approved the Thursday before last time, so I'm hoping tomorrow I get approved to get in, and then we'll go do that. If not, then I won't do it. I still might show up anyway and just to watch and see maybe if I can get in, but we'll see. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.